Here's your wrestling news for January 18th, 2023. And we're starting with Vince McMahon, who is back with WWE, and the executive chairman's return continues to make waves throughout the industry. McMahon is eager to work towards a possible sale of the company and is working to have even more power over decisions behind the scenes. Yesterday, McMahon filed a written consent amendment to WWE's bylaws with the Securities and Exchange Commission that would give him even more control without requiring the approval of shareholders. The lengthy filing makes clear in writing that McMahon can now make a decision for WWE on his own without a meeting or a vote from shareholders. With this amendment in place, the chairman should have full approval over a potential sale in the coming months, and if such a sale doesn't happen, he'll have full control over WWE's future when new TV rights need to be negotiated. McMahon's aggressive, controversial return to WWE sparked backlash when it happened earlier this month, and it was all but a certainty that lawsuits would be filed against the executive chairman. Sportico reports that Detroit's police and fire retirement system has sued McMahon in an attempt to block him from regaining control over WWE and to prevent what's being called expediting a sale. A request has been made to issue a complaint as a class action lawsuit, which could slow the progress of a sale down significantly should this complaint gain steam. Coming after a Delaware shareholder filed a suit against McMahon last week, this new lawsuit hits many of the same points, arguing that McMahon breached fiduciary duties as controlling stockholder with his power play of a return to WWE and rewriting of WWE's bylaws. This complaint also alleges that McMahon rewriting the WWE bylaws could and will prevent the board from making critical decisions, which is seemingly what McMahon is counting on, given his attempts to be able to make decisions without their consultation. It's unclear just how much either suit will affect McMahon, who remains undeterred in his quest to regain full control of WWE, and it's been noted that McMahon is already back in Titan Towers. Not only is McMahon once again stomping down those halls, but he has been in contact with several WWE departments, a far cry from the public statements and claims that Vince is just back to oversee a sale. As of this time, McMahon is yet to regain the position as head of creative, which has been operated by Triple H since Vince's retirement last July. Triple H has had 2 backstage meetings with talent to assure them that he maintains creative control, though many believe that is the case only while McMahon allows it. Despite the insistence that Vince McMahon's return to WWE wouldn't lead to major changes in how the company operates, the only consistent thing that's happened in the last few weeks since he's been back has been the changes. It was just last week that Stefanie McMahon resigned as co-CEO and chairwoman, and since then, multiple names from WWE's board have resigned, including Manjeet Singh, the person who oversaw the McMahon investigation. With another week comes even more changes as PW Insider reports that Stefanie Fiondella, who served as the promotion's vice president of communications, is out the door. Fiondella started with the company back in 2004 as the vice president of marketing and communications operations, a role she held for nearly 15 years until her departure in January 2019. Returning as Vice President of Communications in 2021, Fiondella oversaw the promotion's thought leadership program and strategy while also landing speaking engagements for company executives as well as WWE superstars at industry events. Not only that, but Fiondella also served as co-chairperson of the WWE Women's Affinity Group, so her departure has been a major one backstage. It was less than 2 weeks ago that an employee meeting at WWE Stamford headquarters attempted to boost the spirits of concerned employees, though the promises made haven't been kept. It was at that meeting to discuss Vince McMahon's return and a possible sale that it was stressed that WWE management would all retain their role, a promise that came mere days before Stefanie McMahon's shocking exit. As we mentioned earlier, Triple H held 2 talent meetings, one before SmackDown and the other prior to this week's Raw, to calm nerves about rumored changes. During them, the King of Kings tried to dispel worries about a sale, but also about any changes to the creative direction of things. But so far, what WWE has been telling staff and talent and what is actually happening are very different things. So Fiondella is gone as WWE's VP of Communications in another major change that WWE had previously said wasn't going to happen, and she's not the only one who's packed up her things. On Tuesday, just after noon, Fightful Select broke the news that Adam Hopkins, a longtime WWE employee who also served as VP of Communications, has departed as well. Hopkins was with WWE for over 25 years, and though the nature of his departure isn't public knowledge, it was Big E who seemingly confirmed the news in a tweet replying to Sean Ross Sapp. Emails sent by Wrestling Inc. to Hopkins' WWE work email have also bounced back, giving a message reading, "Security or policy settings at WWEcorp.com have rejected your message." A look at Hopkins' LinkedIn page will reveal that he worked for WWE for practically his entire adult working life and is perhaps best known in media circles as the point man, setting up interviews and arranging access to events. To your average fan, Hopkins was the guy who introduced Triple H and Shawn Michaels on media calls, and it was his idea in 2014 for the game to start doing these calls to promote events. From humble beginnings as a fan services coordinator in September 1997, Hopkins worked his way up the corporate ladder and reached the communications department in February 2000. Despite his role, Hopkins remained part of the fan services division, and it wasn't until February 2022 that he would be promoted to an executive role, gaining the vice president title he'd hold until his departure. Hopkins' departure comes alongside the likes of Stephanie McMahon, Stefanie Fiondella, Manjeet Singh, fellow board member Ignace Lahoud, and 3 board members who were removed from their positions to make room for McMahon and his allies, all just part of the massive WWE shakeups that the company said mere weeks ago would not be happening. As if these ongoing resignations aren't all enough to deal with, there's still an entire company to sell, and the wrestling news world has been dominated by reports about potential buyers. Names you'd expect, like Comcast, Fox, and the Saudi Arabia PIF, have been listed against more unique names, such as Tony Khan, but what does the People's Champion think of all this? Speaking on CNBC's Squawk on the Street, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson shared his 2 cents with show anchors Morgan Brennan and David Faber about what he believes the future of WWE will be. "It's an exciting brand. I think it's a very attractive company and I'm excited, and I wish Vince and the company all the best." When asked by Faber whether he expects McMahon will be kept on board in the event of a sale, Johnson predicted that he probably would. "So I think with the new owners, if there are new owners and acquirers who are going to come in, I think that they have to share that same passion that Vince has for the company and for the world of pro wrestling, which isn't always easy to do. As you guys know, with a company like this that's been so incredibly successful over the years, a sale and acquisition can be very complicated, but there's that unique added anchor to this, I believe, that Vince feels, where you gotta find the right buyer who still has that passion and love for this very unique world." While some have speculated on Johnson himself buying WWE, that's unlikely to happen, as the Great One may be rich, but would be unable to afford to buy WWE without some serious financial backup. It was last October that Johnson told BNN Bloomberg that he has spoken to Nick Khan about buying WWE, but doesn't believe being the owner is right for him. Johnson is far too busy to even consider taking on WWE today, as in addition to his thriving Hollywood career, he is also preparing for the launch of the XFL, the rebooted football league once owned by Vince McMahon, which will kick off 1 month from today. Johnson is hardly the only WWE legend to be watching WWE's situation closely, as on his Click This podcast, Kevin Nash weighed in on Vince McMahon selling his company. "The thing was, McMahon's return to WWE wasn't only to facilitate a sale, but it was to make sure that the stockholders got optimum bang for their buck. The stock went up about 20% upon the announcement of McMahon's return." Nash admitted to being a shareholder with WWE, and the stock did rise to $85.36 on January 6th of this year, the day McMahon returned to the board. While WWE's stock soared, it also plummeted when reports came out of a sale to the Saudi Arabia Public Investment Fund, so if the decision as to who buys is indeed McMahon's and McMahon's alone, he should think long and hard before he inks a deal. WWE will have to consider the shareholders when making a decision regarding a buyer, but if one buyer emerges victorious, there may not be shareholders for long. When it was reported that the Saudi PIF had bought WWE, reports that were later debunked, it was also said that the fund planned on taking WWE private, which is still believed to be the case. It was in the summer of 1999 that the WWF invited Wall Street to step in the ring with them, and it's not just the Saudis who believe it's time to go private once more. Speaking on his My World podcast, Jeff Jarrett shared his view that WWE should go private, explaining that wrestling runs better when it doesn't have to answer to shareholders and investors. Jarrett celebrated the idea of the buck stopping with one person, which in this case would be Vince McMahon. Of course, going private would mean that McMahon would have even more control over WWE without having to answer to shareholders in what would be a bold move even for him to make. But what do you make of all this? Has McMahon gone too far by writing his own bylaws, and who should be the new owners of WWE? Sound off in the comments and keep tuned to Slat Rock Wrestling for the story of the century. We have some heartbreaking news to report, as Ring of Honor star and World Tag Team Champion Jay Briscoe has died at the age of 38. Briscoe, real name Jamin Pugh, was a part of Ring of Honor's first show and remained part of the promotion for 20 years, as Tony Khan explained in a tweet. In his message, Khan spoke about how Jay and his brother Mark dominated Ring of Honor's tag team division and captured the titles at Final Battle last month with a win over FTR. The Shore News Beacon reports that Briscoe died in a car accident near his home in Laurel, Delaware, and that the crash happened just minutes from his house. Multiple calls were made to the authorities, and the initial responder arrived at 5:18 p.m. local time, and it was later confirmed that there had been 2 adult fatalities from the crash by the vehicle, which had 4 people inside. It was confirmed by Tony Khan that Briscoe was one of the names killed in the crash, and no details have been shared by Delaware State Police as to the identity of the other victim. Widely regarded as one of the best tag teams of the 21st century, the Briscoes held gold in New Japan, Impact, QCW, and CZW on top of their 13 reigns as ROH World Tag Team Champions. Jay's success wasn't just reserved to the tag team division though, as he was also a 2-time ROH World Champion, and he and Mark were part of the inaugural ROH Hall of Fame class last year. This is a truly tragic loss to the wrestling world of a star who should have had years and decades ahead of him, and we're offering our condolences to his family at this time. After news of Briscoe's death, tributes immediately came flooding in from those who knew him and those who were part of wrestling. On Twitter, Cash Wheeler said that he has been in tears since he heard the news, while Matt Hardy said he was honored to work with him many times. Veteran ROH announcer Ian Riccaboni, who called the action for the Briscoes' final ROH match at Final Battle, called Jay one of a kind, saying he'd give you the shirt off his back and was so proud of his kids. Briscoe never competed for WWE, but that didn't prevent Triple H from giving his own tribute, calling Jay an incredible performer who shared a deep connection with fans across the globe. On last night's NXT episode, the promotion gave another tribute to him, as commentators Vic Joseph and Booker T addressed his death, saying it was a tragedy in the wrestling world. Several WWE superstars and employees also shared their condolences online, showing just how much Jay Briscoe meant to the wrestling world.